was just searching for a way not to hurt so much. I wanted out. So much of my life is about standing in a doorway and just saying yes to whatever comes through the doorway, just saying yes. We ask questions and then we live kind of around them and in them and through them with other people. She said, I have so much to tell you. And that was like someone had grabbed me, mid-fall. It was almost like just being awake and dreaming. And you wake up and go, oh, that was really important.
Welcome to the Spacious Unknown. I'm your host, Kat Bucciantini. This podcast is a place where stories of spiritual lives can be shared, especially those that are a little unconventional. Stories shaped by curiosity and doubt, tenderness and intuition, grief and joy, and the quiet practice of inner listening. Before we begin, a gentle note. Spirituality is alive and always unfolding. What you will hear now is one moment in time, one expression of someone's path. I invite you to listen with grace, curiosity, and a tenderness that leaves room for nuance rather than neat conclusions. Today, I am joined by Emily, and I invite you to settle in as we explore the shape of her journey. Welcome, Emily. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what your life looks like right now?
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Kat. My life right now, I am a very recent, empty nester. My youngest child, my third and youngest child, went to college this year. And I am missing my kids, but also very much enjoying the time that I have to be with myself. I am a writer. I write twice a monthly newsletter on Substack called A Thin Space. I'm also a spiritual companion, and sometimes I host or help facilitate contemplative groups and retreats and other events like that. So that's where I'm at. I live in Omaha, Nebraska.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to start us off with a little centering meditation.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I'll just invite you to close your eyes. You can also leave them open and unfocused on something if that's more comfortable for you. And we'll just take some deep centering breaths in through our nose and out through our mouths, just letting any tension go with that out breath. I'm going to have you start by noticing the air around you, its temperature and humidity or dryness, the way it touches your skin.
Yeah, it's cold. Cold and dry. Can feel it on my fingers, on my nose, and parts that are exposed.
And then just start to notice what sounds you can hear being carried on that air, both in the room you're in and outside of those walls.
It's very quiet. And then a interior room in an old brick building with thick walls. So the silence is the noise that I can hear.
And then start to notice the places where your body touches the space around you.
And I can feel my back against this comfortable, cushy chair, feel my seat against the chair, can feel my knees. I've got my legs crossed and my knees are kind of cold from the cold air.
Notice the support beneath you, holding you up and extending all the way to the earth itself.
Now I've got the chair and the floor And then below the floor are all the supports for the first floor of the building. And then down under that is the ground somewhere.
As you breathe in, noticing the air going through your nostrils and picking up any scents that you can smell, breathing a little bit deeper to pick up all those scents that are just always there and go unnoticed.
I don't smell much. Just my own clothes that I've had on
Mm.
all day and maybe a little dust. They smell like me. Whatever that is, they smell like me. Smell like the probably some of the food I've cooked today. I've been out a little bit, so they smell like the cold, kind of sharp outdoor air. Smell like the gym. I've been in the gym.
And so following that air down a little way, just noticing any taste lingering in the back of your throat, on your tongue, in your mouth.
I was eating some peanut butter with raisins earlier. I can taste the raisins because they're still kind of sour. I can taste a little bit of the tea that I was drinking earlier. Drink strong black tea. I can just feel a little acidic taste in the back of my throat.
So following that air down into your lungs, noticing the way your body shifts to accommodate it. I'm going to ask you to turn inward and see if you can find a place of stillness. It can be really small.
There's just a sort of turning in my brain, some kind of little shift, and then I can drop down into onto the bottom, into the bottom of something where I can just rest.
So just breathe into that still space at the bottom where you can rest. Just taking as much time as you need here and rejoining me when you're ready by opening your eyes. I'd like to start with the beginning of your story. What people, places, things shaped your spirituality growing up?
Yes, I would say that my spirituality, in terms of its outward external structure, was shaped by first the Southern Baptist Church and then later non denominational evangelical churches. That was the outside structure. Internally, there was a lot of other interesting things going on because I was always questioning and searching and pushing for something that I wasn't finding in the more black and white structure of the churches that I attended when I was a kid.
Mm.
And my mother, in her particular faith, which was much more in line with some of that, I think she had less struggle with the external structures of particular theologies. I bumped up against that. It didn't seem to fit particularly well. My father wasn't in my life very much after the time that I was 5. his spirituality looked very different, but I was not aware of that or what it looked like. So I was very much shaped by, well, I existed within these particular structures, and I was shaped by my need to care for my mother and our very codependent, enmeshed household where there was just not a lot of safety and the need to protect myself, to protect her, to protect my sister all the time. And all of this happening within a set of rules, a set of structures. This is the way you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to do. And then me never really fitting very well with any of that. And I mean, we might talk more about this later, but, as I grew, the older I got, the harder it got for me to fit inside and also to do the work of that I thought was required of me, taking care of my mom and her emotions and her well-being. So that's a start anyway. It's a start. I would say that I did, though, have this ongoing relationship with the person of Jesus apart from any kind of theology or stories from the time that I was really little.
Mm.
And that has stuck with me, the deep oneness or connection to something has stuck with me all the way through. I look at it, might label it differently now, but that part that part hasn't changed. And that's a very personal. It sort of runs beneath or around or above or through all those structures and changes and traumatic experiences um, that were going on and creating a lot of like stuff. There was this thread, you know,
Mhm.
and I would define it, or as a kid, I would have defined it as what I called Jesus. So there's a start.
Yeah, how was you called it Jesus, and I'm curious how it was different from the Jesus that other people may be familiar with.
Yeah, well, in some ways, when I was a child, it wasn't. I knew the Bible stories about Jesus. I knew the stories. I knew the theology around Jesus. Um, what the pastors told us about what he was, what he came to do. But then I had this personal, in those churches, do you have the personal relationship with Jesus? But I had this personal something that was mine. This Jesus that I talked to all the time, that answered me back, that didn't seem particularly concerned with what was happening in the churches, what was being taught, what was this other entity, Jesus, was interested in me pretty much,
Mhm.
and how I was and um, how I was feeling, how I was navigating my life. And for me as a kid, before I realized, and this was much later, there was no separation between myself and this person of Jesus. I'm going to call it that for now. At some point, I realized, oh, there's no separation. But as a child, I thought there was, and Jesus was the person that I talked to, that I brought all my stuff to, that I knew I wouldn't get judged or tried to fix in any way. I didn't have to worry about what Jesus thought in a way that I did with everyone else. Everyone else. So in that way, it just seemed like it was my own private, you know, experience.
Yeah, yeah. Was there a point when this all shifted that like a pretty specific point, or was it just a season of shifts? What did it look like for you?
I would say there was for the first 40 years of my life, I was leaning pretty hard into the idea there has to be a different way. There has to be a different way on multiple levels, not just of experiencing, not just of spirituality, I guess I would have called it at that point, or um, religion or faith, but of being in the world. And I lived with undiagnosed mental illness for until I was into my 40s. Had a lot of trauma in my background, very sensitive person, very intense, had chronic pain, that kind of thing. So for about 40 years, I was just searching for a way not to hurt so much. And I wanted out. I felt like I was in a box and I couldn't find the door. And I remember, I think it was around 40, because I believe that was when I started meditating consistently. And my brain began to do these really interesting things on its own that I didn't really have anything to do with. I remember thinking, I've got to find a way out of this box. Am I just stuck in here forever? And for me, the box was the pain and the desire for some kind of oneness and a sense of wholeness, I think, when I look back to that really. And at that point, a variety of things happened. I started meditating. I started my training to be a spiritual companion and director, which was transformative. And I think that was the first kind of push into something new.
Mm.
Because by the time I was in my early 40s, I didn't feel like I was in a box.
Mhm.
Um, so that was one thing. And then a few years later, I really did have what what can sometimes be called a dark night of the soul, where I felt like I was hanging onto a ledge of my beliefs, not just my beliefs, but um, the way that I had perceived my family for years, the way that I had perceived myself. And I was hanging on and I needed to let go. And I thought that if I let go, I would lose this relationship with this Jesus persona.
Mhm.
But I also knew that I had to. I had to. And so I did. So then I just started falling, which was very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I thought, when there's the ground, and I had some help. I had some people come along and say, I know where you are. It's okay. And that eventually, I think what I did was I took this big long arc out and around and back into myself, which is, I think, probably where I am now. Still falling, not a lot of ground, but much more comfortable with the fact that I don't know, and very grateful to have let go of the ledge. So I know that's a lot of metaphors, but it's the it's the easiest way, I guess, for me to describe what happened. So there was a lot of pushing and 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 waiting. And then there was some release and also some diving into the unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned it that the falling felt scary and that you had some people guide you
Mhm.
or at least recognize where you were.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering what that looked like on the surface to the people on the surface to people around you.
Mhm.
Yeah, what did that look like externally for you to fall like that and have some people kind of reaching out and helping?
Yeah. It was I had been very used to doing everything alone. I didn't grow up with safety, so I didn't trust anybody. And I had, from a very young age, sort of the responsibilities of a grown up. So I assumed that whatever I had to do, I had to do it myself. But my current spiritual companion, my companion, we are part of an organization together, contemplative organization, and we go to retreat every year for that organization. And I had just fallen over the ledge, and I didn't know her particularly well at that point, but I had a friend who did. And my friend introduced her to me. And I looked at her and I must have had, I don't know what I said. I must have had some kind of very familiar look on my face.
Mm.
She looked at me and she said, I have so much to tell you.
Oh, wow.
And that was like someone had grabbed me, mid fall and just held on. And so I spent some of that retreat talking with her. She had been for 6 years Tibetan Buddhist nun. She had been involved in Hindu organizations. She's has a wide variety of teachings, and she had been through what I was going through. And so she continues to kind of hold me and hold space for me as I continue on this path. And that was just a lifesaver for me.
Mm.
Other people, like my partner, just held space for me, just listened. My closest family members, um, didn't. They had a lot of trouble with the way I began to see what had happened to me. Uh, and that was a tremendous loss, a tremendous grief, continues to be. But in some ways, you fall over the edge or whatever, you lose your self or what you thought was you. But for me, I also gained a self, that I was a person in the world. And I continue to have a deep sense of that self in a way that I just have never had before. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the the story of your spiritual director and first meeting her. That's I I mean, I always wonder how people like, when you have those types of encounters, they're really powerful, and but when you hear them, you're like, "I don't know if I could say that to someone myself," like, "I know what you need," or "I have so much to tell you."
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have come from a very deep heart, soul place, from her.
Yes. And now that I know her more, she's in her early 70s.
Mm.
She has been through all of this and continues to live in it, to live with it, to live with her life, to be with herself. And yeah, I understand how you can encounter circumstances like that and then something like that would come out. I'm not saying that I don't know what I would do, but I can understand how that was something that she was able to do. And that's very encouraging to me as I continue um my own journey that I would see with more clarity
Mm.
and that I would be and and be able to speak and be out of that
Mm.
clarity.
Mhm.
That's a that's a lovely thing. So,
Yeah. You mentioned that you've kind of done this full circle back to yourself, and I'm curious what that presence looks for you now, what names you use, how you would describe it.
I don't know.
That's
No, I mean, really, the problem is that there aren't a lot of words around some of this stuff. You begin to try to describe something that really is wordless, and if people have a sense of what you're talking about, they're like, "Oh, yeah, got it," you know. But yes, I did this sort of arc into I don't know where everything just sort of fell away. My the traditions of my childhood that I think I had grown out of, religious traditions, um, the way that I saw my family, my upbringing, and the way that I saw myself, or I guess I realized that I had never seen myself as a separate entity.
Mm.
All of these things. And then at some point, yes, I sort of got returned to me and I had a self. And the way that I saw that family looked different. The way that I saw spirituality was it was much more just life. I used to see spirituality as something that was separate. Like, this is the spiritual and this is the not. And this is where we do the spiritual, and this is where we don't do it. Or, you've got to do the spiritual at certain times during the day, or I don't know, you have friends who are spiritual and other people who aren't. And that's just not the case. It just isn't. And so I guess now we just define spirituality as I don't know, I don't even like to use the word. I'm a spiritual companion, but I'd rather just call myself a companion, because it all is. And so I just kind of keep returning to this idea of being with. I want to be with myself. I don't want to abandon myself. I don't want to betray myself in some way. I want to be with myself as I am. And then that allows me to be with others as they are. And if I'm with myself, then I feel like if I'm in myself and I'm with myself, then I'm with Jesus or whatever that thing was. I'm noticing. I'm not with him because I'm never without him. Yeah, here goes no words again. I'm recognizing that it's all one thing and that I'm all, I guess. So I'm not sure that's an answer to your question, but that's how I see that's how I see the world, I guess,
Mhm.
in my experience of being human.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fully embodied
Mhm.
experience.
Now, when I remember,
Right, right.
sometimes I forget.
We all do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any seasonal practices or rhythms or routines or, yeah, anything that you do to nourish your soul, um, or recognize the sacredness of everything that is?
I like to move my body, or I need to move my body. I I get nervous, energy gets stuck in me, and I begin to kind of vibrate. So I have always used movement, lots of different forms of exercise as a way to move things through me.
Mm,
And usually in movement is when I recognize things or notice things that if I was just sitting still, I wouldn't. About 20 years ago, I started swimming laps, or I began to learn to swim, which was a process.
mm,
I used to say I was on the 5-year plan, but it was a gift because in swimming, you kind of got sensory deprivation, you know? You don't hear much, you don't see much. You do smell things. Water is a great carrier for If someone gets in the pool with strong deodorant on, you can smell it. But it in some ways, it's very, it's rhythmic, you can only breathe at certain times. You're just submerged, and that has been a wonderful practice for me. Not just moving things through, but of letting my brain just haggle and bounce around in my head, and my emotions go everywhere, and I don't really mess with it much because I'm moving my arms, my legs. And then I get out of the pool and it's like the water has just taken the stuff.
Mhm.
I feel better. Being outside, I'm a big gardener. I like to hike. Is also in all weather. I just hiked yesterday and it's very cold and snowy here. It is another way for me to just empty the stuff that I accumulate out. A lot of that stuff isn't mine. It's just things that I pick up from being in the world and um just, yeah, accumulate from conversations and other people, and I can go out and be in nature, and those things can go back, to where they came from, or go back to the earth. I can go work in my garden. I'm a writer. That is an intuitive practice for me. I'm listening for what it is I need to write about, for the words that I need to use. It's very grounding and also surprising because what shows up is always really interesting. So those are some of the things, and those are not seasonal. They're pretty consistent. But yeah, those are a few.
You mentioned when you swim that as you're swimming, like, things kind of knock around and then they just kind of sluice off as you exit the pool, and I'm curious with the when you're hiking, what that looks like, what that practice looks like to have to let go and release.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say it's similar in the sense that, the movement somehow just kinda jiggles things around, and I would say that they just go down into the ground, They just go out of me and into the ground. The more I walk, sometimes I run too, or run trails, if my body is cooperating with me. It's the breath, it's the movement through nature. I used to get upset with myself that that I wasn't with nature in these prescribed ways. I felt like I should stop more. I should sit with trees. I should, and this is fine. I have friends who do this and it's wonderful. Um, but for me, it's, I need to move through the natural world. And in moving through it, that's how I'm with it. And that's how whatever's in there goes. In my garden, I just think it's compost. It's just my stuff is just, if I'm digging holes in my yard, I am somehow contributing to the health of the plants that I'm putting in it. So, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of the earth can take all of that stuff and compost it and make it into something nourishing
Mm.
elsewhere.
Yeah, that's something that is an always a growing edge for me. I feel it. I experience it happening, which is why I can say yes to it. My background in my background of codependency and that kind of thing makes me not want to give an already burdened earth more stuff.
Mm, mhm,
Um, but what I'm learning is that that's part of the that's part of the process. It's part of being human. That kind of thing, that's okay. Let's not bury more plastic, but let's give some of these other things to the earth. The earth is good about caring for that kind of thing. So,
mhm.
mhm.
I have had in the past similar
Mm.
things where I'm like, I don't the earth has to deal with a lot right now. I really wanna add my burdens, and I think switching that from me throwing away something that's negative for me and instead seeing it as, compost that can be used and energy that can be transformed, has helped a lot.
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Do you have a place where you find spiritual community, or at least nourishment and community for your soul, whether it's explicitly considered spiritual or not? Mm.
Yes, I do. After having spent a good chunk of my early adult life in churches where I was encouraged to only find community there because those were the spiritual community. Those were the only places where you could find it
Mm.
because everything else wasn't safe or was wrong or something. I've had just a wonderful experience the last couple of decades of finding it everywhere. It's just everywhere. I have very good, deep relationships and friendships with people where I live, and then also kind of around the country and the world. I cultivate deep relationships because I need them. I'm not very good at cocktail conversation or lighter stuff. So when I find people who are willing to just be with me and I'm willing to be with them, then I work hard to 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 make space for that. I also so some of my friends are other spiritual companions, lots of them aren't. And then I'm also a part of this group that's based in California. It's called the Journey Center Association. It's a contemplative um community, dispersed community of people. We're all over the country and all over the world. A small group of people, mostly spiritual companions, who meet once a year for retreats and then also have some collaborative stuff that we do during the year. And that's a group that certainly, I mean, that's a really good example of a group that supports me, cares for me. There are a number of people in that group that would identify as Christian in some way. I wouldn't at this point, and there's a number of other people who wouldn't either. So it's very kind of it doesn't really matter what you are, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so one of the joys for me, I guess, is just finding deep relationships, deep support all over the place. That doesn't mean it's everywhere, but it's a lot of places. And that's really joyful, I guess, for me.
I'm curious if there are, religion serves purposes in different ways. One thing is a it provides some guidelines around how to live a moral life, how to be to know that you are doing right
Mhm.
and good. And I'm curious what guides your inner truths, what values or inner truths you have that guide how you are in the world.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I don't wanna come across, I guess, as someone who is anti-religion. The kind of religion I experienced had negative connotations for me, but so much of the, like, the Buddhist teachings that I'm familiar with, the Christian teachings or Christian mysticism and that kind of thing that I'm familiar with, those came out of or were held within particular religious structures. And they are. They are helpful for thinking about why we're here and what to do while we're here. And what does it mean to live a human life? I just don't, for me, I don't seem to fit completely inside one or the other or any, although they overlap.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and that presents a problem, sort of. Where is the, as you asked, where's the, where's the truths? Where's the ground? When some of these other traditional places of grounding, you seem to not, at least for me, I seem to not be able to hang out in for very long. I would say I would say it's in my relationships with people who are also seeking to be with whatever is there in themselves and the world. I would say it's in my life and my experiences and all the um, religious or traditions that live in me, all the teachings that I was exposed to, they're all still, all that stuff's still floating around in there. My life, my background, um, I think, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but I have a practice of listening and noticing what happens in myself and what happens around me and there's people in the world. And I just pay attention and I see it and go, okay, yes. I see what I notice and in me and in others and in the world around me. And I can tell, not all the time, what's a part of this thread, that's run through me my life. What's a part of that? The thread that I follow.
Mm.
I started at the beginning talking about Jesus. Well, maybe Jesus is, you know, maybe the thread is, and I get a sense, yep, okay, yes, let's do that. Or this doesn't feel good. Let me sit with this a bit. What's a skillful way for me to interact with this? I ask other people who will listen and be with things for me. I guess it's just the deep noticing. And yes, that comes out of a variety of traditions, but I can't say it's attached to a particular one.
Mm.
Seems sort of free form and amorphous, except that except that it just isn't because it's very present, very there, very most of the time very clear.
I'm getting this sense that you're listening and noticing what resonates with your soul. It's that yes, that internal yes, and that is what guides you as you move through the world.
Yes, that's a much more succinct way to put it. That is the case. Please take all of my words and put them into something that's understandable. Yes, yes. hmm It's it's just doorways, it's just thresholds. I think so much of my life is about standing in a doorway and just saying yes to whatever comes through the doorway or to me walking through the doorway, just saying yes over and over to what appears,
Hmm.
what's next.
You mentioned some of the things that religions offer, like the answering some of those questions about who we are, where we're from, why we're here, what happens after we die. And I'm curious if there are any questions that you're sitting with or struggling with or just kind of have noticed are kind of swirling around in your soul space.
Well, I have lots of questions. I have so many questions. I used to not have a whole lot of questions, or actually, I probably had questions. I just didn't think that they were appropriate to ask. And but they ended up just being very present and persistent. And now I think all I have is questions. I have questions about who I am, why I'm here, what happens when I'm not anymore. I don't expect those questions to be answered, really.
Mm.
I think being here is about asking those questions. That seems to be what humans do. We ask questions and then we live kind of around them and in them and through them
Mm.
with other people.
Mhm.
I think if you're willing, or if I'm willing to live with those questions in the discomfort of the unanswerable, then that's a rich space. That's a space of possibility, of imagination, of capacity. Is an edge space, which I like that term. I use it a fair amount. We don't like the edges. We don't like the spaces in between, but they're very, I mean, in ecology, they're very fruitful spaces.
Mm.
They're the spaces where lots of things can grow because the habitat isn't determined in some way or another. It's not a field, it's not a forest, it's both. And I think the questions are like that. If you can live in the questions, at least for me, if I can live in the questions, then I have a then life feels like it has oxygen. It feels like I can breathe. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but also it's abundant, I guess. Yeah.
This is kind of a one-off curiosity. I always wanna know if you have had or experienced something that you would consider a transcendent type of experience.
Yeah, I have. I've had a number of those. Don't have many. Well, lately, much lately. There was a year though where I went to see someone who was a body worker who did something that he called emotional release. I knew that I was carrying a lot of stuff and I had not had a way to move any of that out of me. It wasn't something that we were, I was taught how to do or shown how to do. And I was probably about 40. And so I went to this guy and I wasn't sure. And so I saw him for about a year, every few weeks. And every time I would just lie down on the table and sometimes he would not even touch me. He would just put his hand over me. And at the beginning of the session, I would just begin, it was like a movie. I would get a movie going in my head and it would last the extent of the session. And it was some deep kind of imagery and storying around something that had happened to me, or it was almost like just being awake and dreaming. And you wake up and go, oh, that was really important. It was that kind of thing, except that I was awake. And afterwards, it would take me forever to get up and get out of there. And I would have to go home and lie down. And that happened for a year. And yes, it was very something.
Mm.
And it was clearing, I think.
Mhm.
It's just stuff clearing out of me. So that's probably that's the thing that I can, specifically point to. And oddly enough, in the last decade, not a lot. Not much in the way of big, expansive experiences. In some ways now, I mean, if something like that happened, I would obviously be with it. But in some ways right now, the thought makes me tired. It makes me, oh, it's an awful lot of energy to have those experiences. I don't want to anymore. It's fine, but I think I'm okay. I don't know what that says about where I'm at right now. I think it's interesting, but I certainly have. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that you're having small daily
Mm, mhm.
experiences of wonder and awe.
Yes, I think that's absolutely the truth. Every day, every day. Yes. Yeah, I like it that way. I could take it in small bites. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
And as we close, is there anything that you would like to offer guests a savor on? Anything?
I suppose I would just encourage people as they're able to welcome yourself, to welcome the parts of yourself that show up, whatever they are, wherever they are, whenever, to be with yourself gently and compassionately with a lot of tenderness and care, and to return to that practice over and over again because it reminds me of how deeply tied and connected I am to everything else, and how deeply I'm loved. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
If something in this story spoke to you, you can find ways to engage more deeply with our guests' work through the links connected to this episode. The Spacious Unknown is a living, shared space, and I welcome new voices. If you feel the pull to share your own unfolding story, there's a way to step forward and be part of the podcast. If you're feeling drawn to explore your own spiritual life more deeply, I've also included information about spiritual companioning. You'll find all of this in the show notes. The Spacious Unknown is part of Unfurl, my publication on Substack, and is produced by Embodied Conversations, LLC. Thank you for being here and for listening with care. Until next time, may you keep listening for what is true as you move through the wide and spacious unknown.